If you walk into a supermarket, what do you see? Rows of breads, cheeses, meats, plenty of colorful fruits and vegetables, half of them never locally in season, yet available here. Then boxes of chips, crackers, cookies mass-produced, each with their own design. These brightly lit shelves, neatly stocked, with every imaginable food item at our fingertips, is a work of wonder. All we have to do is choose. In 1989, Boris Yeltsin, a political leader of the Soviet Union and former chief of the Moscow Communist Party, came to visit a Randall's grocery store in Houston, Texas. Yeltsin was amazed at the variety of foods and the customers idly shopping with carts filled to the brim. Throughout the 80s, the Soviets' economy was in shambles. Consumer goods were scarce, people had to wait in long lines to buy food and other necessities, if they were available. For Yeltsin, this was a turning point in denouncing communism and embracing a free market system. This symbolic indicator to the end of the Soviet Union was also seen as the triumph of the United States capitalist system. Boris Yeltsin became president of Russia. Yeltsin embraced a capitalist market economy by ridding businesses of government price control and allowing the privatization of resources such as oil and natural gas. The part that is often left out in this inspiring grocery market tale is these reforms into a free market system ended up in mass inequality and unemployment for people in Russia, and much of their energy necessities were snatched up by oligarchs who jacked up prices, further causing more people to be sent into poverty to the point that Russia experienced a depression as worse as the 1930s. This paved the way for Vladimir Putin in 1999 and who has been in control since. People ask, so why does one economic system work for one nation but not work for the other? In the complexities of history, religion, work, and imperialism, a better question to ask in all of this is, who benefits from the system in place? Who gets what? And who is making that choice? Welcome everyone to our 5th economics lecture, Economic Systems and Taxes. We'll be defining a few economic systems, their costs and benefits, what makes the US so darn complicated, and finally, we'll be looking at our taxes through W-2. Now think back at the beginning of economics. Our resources are limited, we have to make the choice about what to have and what to give up. But this also forces societies to do the same. So I want to try and simplify this into 3 different questions. 1, what goods and services are being produced? 2, how are they being produced? And 3, for whom? Because of scarcity, no society can produce everything the people want. And that last question, for whom are goods and services to be produced? Who gets what? This is my favorite question because it is a slippery one. When you talk about the reasoning, people end up asking, well, who deserves what?
We take, we make, and we dispose. A new phone comes out, so we ditch the old one. Our washing machine packs up, so we buy another. Each time we do this, we're eating into a finite supply of resources and often producing toxic waste. It simply can't work long term. So what can?
What is fair? Again, every society finds its own answer, but this is what really creates divisions in economic systems. The ability to pay is the approach most of us know best. You want that food, those clothes, that car, that house? Show me the money. Anyone who can afford to buy this apple can have it. Another approach is equal distribution. Let's all pull our resources together to then equally distribute food, clothing, transportation, and housing. It may not be your choice of what you want, but everyone has something. It can also be first come, first serve, where only those who were first in line or had the ability to wait end up getting what they want. Or it can be based on need. A soup kitchen does this by providing meals to people who are houseless. A public school provides classroom aids for students with different learning abilities. These are just a few ways. Now, who decides all of this? There are 3 different types of economic systems we look at for decision making. The first and oldest is a traditional economy, meaning customs and traditions decide the choices of what to produce, how to produce it, and who to give it to. Most traditional economies that survive today belong to indigenous people. For example, the Sentinelese inhabit the North Sentinel Island off the coast of India. There is very little known about this group, including their actual population that can range between 50 to 200 people. Do we have a consistent amount to satisfy our needs? While we're having class over the internet, of course there are people who share this world with us who cannot fathom what the internet is. If you're asking how can this be, India declared this region a tribal reserve and protects the island from any intruders. But in November 2018, John Chow, a 26-year-old American, was sent by the US-based Christian missionary group to travel to North Sentinel Island with the aim of contacting and living amongst the Sentinelese, in the hope of converting them to Christianity.
To a remote island east of India in the Andaman Sea. He was trying to meet and convert the Sentinelese, an endangered tribe photographed here in 2004 that's been isolated for centuries and rejects contact with outsiders who might expose them to disease. According to journals and emails published by the Washington Post, Chow attempted to reach the tribe by boat in the days before his death, but was shot at with an arrow, which pierced his waterproof Bible. He wrote to family, "You guys might think I'm crazy and all this, but I think it's worthwhile to declare Jesus to these people. God, I don't want to die."
Lord, is this island Satan's last stronghold where none have heard or even had the chance to hear your name? Please do not be angry at them or at God if I get killed. Don't retrieve my body. Guess who got killed? And I say this story because while we discuss economic systems, I am leaving out histories of colonization based on religious domination, racism, and imperialism based on declaring a group of people inferior and therefore forced to be the labor force we seek profit from. And that brings us to our next two economic systems. Second, a command economy. Choices about what to produce are left in the hands strictly of a powerful ruler or a government. In the Soviet Union, what to produce, how to produce it, and who gets what was left up to the government. You can also consider kings and pharaohs building temples and walls, but for the people working, it's based on the command to coordinate. It's based on receiving punishment if they do not produce. While we use historic examples of government, we have also seen plenty of businesses that command workers in how they produce through intimidation tactics to this day.
We are not anti-union, but we are not neutral either. We will boldly defend our direct relationship with associates as best for the associate, the business, and our shareholders. We do not believe unions are in the best interest of our customers, our shareholders, or most importantly, our associates. Our business model is built upon speed, innovation, and customer obsession, things that are generally not associated with unions. When we lose sight of those critical focus areas, we jeopardize everyone's job security. We don't badmouth unions in general, but we will speak openly with associates about unions, including any specific concerns about particular unions involved in organizing.
Third, we have a market economy. This depends on individuals, consumers, and producers deciding demand and supply. In a free market economy, there's no plan or direction, meaning no one single person or government tells them what to do. Any one of you right now can open up your own business and market it online without concern of the government telling you what you should sell, how much, or how to produce it. The main goals of a market economy are economic freedom and choice and profit. Some form of market economies are prominent in the US, the UK, and Japan, where, for example, Japan has a few unique jobs in the market based on demand.
Most days, Shoji Morimoto has appointments with a steady stream of clients. His service is as popular as it is peculiar. He bills himself the do-nothing rent-a-man. I lend myself out to do nothing, which means I don't make any special effort, he said. Eating, drinking, or simple chit-chat, that's about it. Rent-a-Man has struck a chord in this workaholic and conformist country. He's collected almost 250,000 followers on Twitter. In his pre-Slacker days, Morimoto bounced aimlessly from one job to another. Out of desperation and on a lark, he decided to rent himself out, charging only for food and car fare. Thousands of encounters later, Rent-A-Man's experiences have earned him royalties from 4 books, including a manga comic about joining clients at museums and Disneyland or providing moral support for a divorcing spouse. His signature blue cap and backpack and his inexplicable success inspired a semi-fictional TV series last year.
友達が死んで3ヶ月経つんですけど、なんか信じられなくてお墓とか来られなかったんで、きっかけにレンタルさんお願いして、あと僕今日誕生日なんでそのきっかけでお線香あげに来ました。
And here, the term capitalism is synonymous with a free market system. Capitalism is an economic system observing that individual resources and labor should be traded and used for profit. Adam Smith is credited for explaining a free market system in his book, The Wealth of Nations, in 1776, the same year the US declared their independence. Smith was a philosopher who never used the term capitalism, but his explanation of bringing wealth to an entire nation began with the individual. The more one works, the more one earns. This supplies individuals and the community with their necessities, and with enough money, it offers the means to make life more convenient and pursue additional goods and services. This point leaves Smith to divide wealth into 2 different parts. That which is used for immediate consumption for necessities like food and shelter, and that which is used for additional revenue. This latter sum he calls capital. And the term capitalism, which again Smith does not use, is derived from its use in a commercial system. Capital is specifically meant for reinvestment and is therefore a major economic engine. No longer are people just spending on necessities, but new furniture, clothing, tools, toys. And that makes a more prosperous market, one built on the freedom to choose. Smith makes the argument that people want more capital. They want more to spend to make life better for themselves. We don't work to make a community better, but to better our personal lives. But ironically, by doing this, we are keeping others employed, and exchanging our capital then makes other people's lives better too. And this is when he argues in order to let this system thrive, it needs to be free from any monarchy dictating what to make or trade. Remember, at the time this was written, there were mainly monarchies. That was the idea of government. He proposed what we call laissez-faire economics, a market with little regulation or input from the government. In theory, this works like gangbusters. Everyone is exchanging, everyone has choices, this circulation of wealth gets more people employed. The actual result? What if people refuse to actually purchase more and instead just continue to accumulate wealth? What if people value that coin storage more than what the coin buys? And that's what happens in the 1800s, 1900s, and today. But during the Industrial Revolution, you have individual investors called capitalists growing wealthy not by labor, but simply buying more land, more machinery, factories, railroads, and were free to do so. Soon you have wealth now gobbled up by a select few who get to determine labor conditions and pricing, and how that wealth is distributed. And that idea of a free market becomes one not controlled by one king, but multiple kings. As for freedom, look at the Phoebus cartel. During Christmas in the 1920s, light bulb manufacturers got together to create a shared agreement in the price of their light bulbs and how long they would last. Light bulb competition showed they can exude light for 2,000 hours on average. The cartel, led by Phoebus Lighting, agreed that worldwide their distribution and production of light bulbs will be 1,000 hours, and claim they will burn brighter, but they will also cost more. Indeed, all evidence points to the cartels being motivated by profits and increased sales, not by what was best for the consumer. and carefully crafting a light bulb with a relatively short lifespan. The cartel hatched the industrial strategy known as planned obsolescence. The consumer had no choice, and with things now built to fall apart, comes more profit for the capitalists in charge. You look at a capitalist nation and see a wealthy nation. But you have to ask yourself, why exactly do we call a nation wealthy when there is so much concentrated wealth, poverty, and pollution at the same time? How can we expect those in poverty to work more for higher pay if the individuals with wealth get to determine the work and pay? Enter Karl Marx. Who is Karl Marx? A specter that haunts college dorms. Marx is considered the father of communism. He wrote the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital. The latter breaks down the dangers and inequities of capitalism. The former explains why we need economic revolution and how to get there. Marx came from a wealthy background. His father was a lawyer from a family of vineyard owners. He married a woman of Prussian nobility, went to college and became invested in philosophy, and like any good philosophy major, he wrote a lot without seeing much in pay. Through this, Marx was becoming increasingly interested in this idea of value. Who deems value? Why can't a person passionate about philosophy and writing live their life following their passion? Why do people have to actually work and depend on a wage just in order to survive? Marx, while born into wealth, became poor and depended on Friedrich Engels for financial support while writing Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto. Das Kapital breaks down money and claims that excess of money is capital. We gave money power in itself the moment we called it valuable. But we didn't put limits on how much money any one person can have, so therefore we gave people unlimited power. The people who accumulate money are capitalists. The capitalists are now the ones who deem what is and isn't valuable in a society and how the rest of capital should be distributed. The Communist Manifesto details that all of history has been the story of class struggle. You have the working class, the have-nots, proletariats, up against the owners of production, the wealthy, the bourgeoisie. So once again, the bourgeoisie are those with power, the haves, the proletariats are the ones doing the work, the have-nots. Marx claimed revolution is inevitable. Once the workers gain power and seize the means of production, private property and the free market would be replaced by national ownership of industries and equal income distribution. Marx then painted the way towards socialism and then communism. So what's the difference between socialism and communism? Depending on the textbook or examples in history, they're used interchangeably. History has created the differences. Socialism, at its core, believes instead of people looking out for themselves like in a free market capitalist system, we should work and contribute for the benefit of the society that we are in. How do we do this? We can still own property, but now we are pulling together our resources and contributing those, and then that money can be used to be distributed to others in our society. Taxes. We provide services for all, and these services are organized through the government. Marx believed that this is a utopian, fictional way of seeing government.
Every working class American in this country should have access to dignified health care, and no person should feel precarious or unstable in their access to housing as our economy develops.
Some Democrats are...
We believe that, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has said, in a modern, moral,
and wealthy society, no American should be too poor to live.
And that's, I think, basically what DSA stands for.
This platform is gaining popularity, especially among young voters who don't have the same connotations around socialism as older generations. According to a 2015 YouGov poll, only 15% of Americans over 65 have a positive view of socialism. But when you look at the people under the age of 30, the percentage more than doubles.
We're talking about socialism as a platform, which, as we both know, has killed over 100 million people.
Full-throated socialism, despite its abject failure in places like Cuba and Venezuela.
I, for one, work hard, pay taxes, believe in capitalism, and have no plan to move to Venezuela or Sweden.
Socialism, I think, can plausibly be depicted as opposing that conception of freedom and equality.
And that's the only way you can have socialism. You have to
force people to take from those according to their ability and give to those according to their need. It takes a totalitarian government to make that work.
Once again, what history shows us is constant class struggle. Communism argues for an uprising, and when that happens, there should be no private ownership of anything. From each according to their ability to each according to their need. Is the belief that you work hard for the community and you are given back based on need, not want. Historically, this has led us to prices and wages and distribution all set by the government. Historically, the result has been either authoritative governments abusing this power and creating mass starvation, or capitalist governments intervening, creating their own violent uprisings like the United States implemented in other Asian and Pacific Island nations and throughout Latin America. This leads us to world wars, cold wars. All of wars for the past century have been about economic struggle and imposing our economic way of life on others. No nation is strictly one or the other. As society becomes more complex, more populated, more industrialized, no philosophy can stay pure when put into an actual political system. So if you heard this explanation and thought, in the US we have billionaires but we also have taxes, it's because we are a mixed economy. It's because of a mixed economy we have public services like hospitals, schools, parks, fire stations, Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid, libraries, our military and police, and roads. The roads! Imagine if all of those were privatized. Imagine if there was a fire at your house and you went up to someone and said, "Excuse me, hey, fire person, please help, help!" And the fire person said, "Nah, that requires an Amazon Prime subscription." At the end of the day, we are free to pursue what we wish, but at the same time, we contribute something to the rest of the community through our taxes too. In the US, our economic values are centered around economic freedom, competition, property rights, and profit motive. The kicker here is that some people are more economically free than others. So we have government protections and regulations to help provide for common resources to create a more equal standard of living. That's socialism and communism tugging at what we deem necessary in a mixed economy. So finally, let's get into one of the most heated debates in our politics and the main factor in macroeconomics: taxes. Benjamin Franklin once said, "In this world, nothing is certain except death and taxes." Taxes are a payment to government for services that people in society can receive. You might see income tax, Medicare tax, Social Security tax, something along those lines. And that's why, although technically you may be making $16 an hour, you're receiving less than that. You're forced to pay the government for some service to provide. There are 3 different ways people can be taxed, and this part is important because it's something many adult Americans do not understand. First, we have a flat tax. This means the same % of tax on everyone. For example, a sales tax, a sugar tax, or a bag tax. It's the same amount despite whoever you are. It's not like you purchase a soda and the cashier says, "Hey, how much you make?" 6 figures, let's charge you more. Next, we have a progressive tax. The more income you make, the higher percentage of taxes you face. An example of this in the United States are income taxes. But there's something especially important about the progressive tax. While technically the more you make, the more is taken out of your paycheck, people have a deep misunderstanding of what that means here. For example, say you make $40,000 a year. If you look here, it would show different tax rates. To the untrained eye, and to many, they might see $40,000 and think, "Wow, I'm paying 25% of my income to taxes. I'm paying $10,000. That is not true. With a progressive tax, it's showing the first $10,000 you make is taxed at 10%. So that's $1,000. The next $10,000 is taxed at 15%, which is $1,500. The next 10% is at 20%, the next at 25%. Instead of taxing your whole income in the same bracket, you work your way through them. So really, instead of paying $10,000 in taxes, you are actually paying $7,000 in income taxes for the year. Lastly, we have a regressive tax. This is a tax percentage that impacts lower income individuals more than higher income because a larger amount of their income is gone. The flat tax is technically a regressive tax simply because for someone making $10,000, a flat tax percentage takes more out of their wallet than the person making $40,000. So besides the sales tax, you have gas taxes, property taxes that have flat percentages based on the product and not on your personal income. This is our current income tax bracket. Just 40 years ago, before President Reagan, that top tax bracket was 70%. Under Reagan, it was slashed to 28%. For the past 30 years, it's been floating now around 35%. Historically, this is still a new phenomenon. Reagan's reasoning was the more wealth that individuals have, the more that is shared and spread throughout the economy and spending. We also call this trickle-down economics or voodoo economics, because what ended up happening was those with wealth just accumulated more wealth. There was no incentive to change supply or increase pay when there was no change in demand. The wealth gap increased drastically, and it has continued to increase since the 80s. So what the heck do taxes pay for? Let's first take a look at federal spending. While this pie chart is from 2015, the number changes by a few percentages. Your federal income taxes pay for federal spending, the majority of which goes to healthcare and Social Security, meaning Medicare, Medicaid, and retirement benefits. If you see mandatory, that is Social Security and health. That's fixed. Discretionary is about 50% of the budget that is then debated, compromised, and voted through by Congress each year. Altogether, federal spending is around $5 trillion each year. That means 1% is around $50 billion. Now, the majority of state taxes go to public education and healthcare, which makes roughly around 60% of California's budget. California has the 10th highest tax rate according to WalletHub, and I want to just let you know there are some states with no income state tax. So what's taken out of your paycheck really depends on how much your income is, if you have any assets like property, and often where you live. Now, these are the most common tax forms that people see. First, the W-2. This is the document of your earnings in 1 year through a single employer. This is the most important document for your tax return because it breaks down how much you earned and where all your money went along the way. Number 2, you have the W-4. This document is what you fill out when you get employed someplace. It's asking you how much of your income do you want to be withheld due to taxes. Now, this part might mean something to you. When you are employed, you write in a number of allowances in box 5. A withheld allowance means your employer is taking out money gradually each month, so you end up paying less, if at all, when you actually file your taxes. But if you put a number there, your employer is withholding less money throughout the year, with the likelihood that you are paying that back when you file taxes. An allowance you claim can be anything. You can claim yourself, a spouse, children, car, house, etc. What it's essentially asking you is, do you need more of your money now or later? A 0 leads to more taken out now, but a bigger refund when you file taxes. 1 or higher leads to less taken out now, but a smaller refund when you file taxes. The last 2 tax forms you should know are the 1040. This is the standard tax form to report tax income and tax refunds. Today, Free Tax USA, TurboTax, H&R Block offer their services free for you. You just get an account, input your W-2 information, and they work out the rest. They provide you with the 1040. The last one is a 1099. This is the independent or freelance working document. So if you work on a project, say a film or theater production, or you're commissioned for a piece of art or music, you will most likely receive a 1099. 1099s do not include income tax, but you still have to pay it when filing a tax return. I mention this for now because of the increase of gig work, and of course this is what artists can normally receive for any given project. So how do you file your taxes? First of all, why do you file your taxes? As we said earlier, taxes help fund education, Social Security, and healthcare as the big main three in your state and nation. And chances are, you paid too much in taxes, and by filing your taxes, the government is saying, whoops, we took out too much, here is your tax return. It's not free money, they're giving back to you what you gave to them. Not all, some. If you make less than $12,400 a year, you do not have to file taxes. They're too low for the IRS to care about. Today, we have plenty of free sites that file your taxes for you if you make $40,000 or less. The IRS actually provides those resources to file for free. You just might wonder what those numbers stand for. So let's check out mine from back in the day. I'm comfortable sharing this because of all my information is technically public, and as a public school teacher, privacy is a relatively meaningless pursuit. So you got your employer's name and address, and ooh, looky here, box 1's got a chunky number. What does that mean? This is how much you were technically paid before taxes. Box 2 is how much was actually withheld from the federal government. Boxes 3 and 5 show how much can be subjected to tax and can technically be taken out of your income. Chances are box 5 is the highest number, but it's not saying that's how much was taken out, it's just showing how much could potentially be taken out. Since I'm in a public sector job, my box 3 is blank. I do not pay Social Security, but I have a separate retirement plan. If you have more questions about that, go ahead and check out the Social Security Act of 1935. Boxes 4 and 6 show the true amount withheld because of Social Security and Medicare taxes. Boxes 7 and 8 are tips given to you that are reported by, say, a customer or employer. If it's all in cash, no need to include it. If it was on card, the amount should be shown there. Box 10 is if your employer provides some type of dependent care benefit that is paid for, like say a daycare program, there would be a tax credit within there. Box 11 shows how much is in possibly your employer's taxable retirement plan for you. Box 12 is what we consider the kitchen sink, with a bunch of different codes that detail a 401k, healthcare coverage, and how much was taken out there. Box 13 shows if you have a retirement plan, and box 14 is other. In my case, union dues. It should label what it's for. I'm sorry if I made some of you doze off. Really, any of the information is searchable, but I'm hoping it's less intimidating to look at now. So, for a few last tips. Tip 1. When you get employed, I recommend putting a 0 in that 5th box on your W-4. Putting a 0 means more money taken out of your paycheck now, but when you file your taxes, you can be insured a refund without any hassle or worry of paying the government back. Number 2, compare different tax sites just to be sure they're giving you the most when you file your taxes. My go-to was Free Tax USA, and you can compare that to more popular sites like TurboTax or H&R Block. Number 3, this is neither here nor there, but do not claim your cash tips. Write them as 0. And if you want to ensure anyone who serves you receives a full tip, try to pay them in cash. If you tip through a card, that's how your tips are then recorded and filed. With cash, no trace. When I was a paperboy at 13, I was told by my employer to always record a receipt of my tips whenever I got one. It took a nice customer to say, "What are you doing? Don't record my tip, just put that in your pocket." And that changed everything. Our economic systems ask us how much are we willing to help each other, and why. In some societies, there is a push in a whole community effort. In the US, historically, we have celebrated individualism, economic freedom, ownership, and profit. What we fail to recognize is what profit could potentially mean. Often, we just see monetary profit, individual monetary profit. How can I better my life through capital for me? But to quote a student, Alicia Naylor Guerrero, I want to cite my sources here. There are so many different types of profit we can use in our economy. Just as there are different types of capital, we can think of educational profit, environmental profit, whole community profit. I'm sure to some of you that sounds immeasurable or like some naive utopian future. But what's wrong with aiming for utopia? because the larger our community grows, all the more we have to gain from it. Thank you for watching. Godspeed.